This day in sports history. It's February 11th, and this day was a sad one throughout the years as we mourned the passing of two super fast men. We also had controversy, scandal, and quid pro quos, plus the most unlikely upset in the boxing ring. Those stories plus a few more and a non-sports fun fact at the end about parachuting beavers. I'll get started right after this.
And that's the end of the first half. As the teams head to the locker room, the Spartans lead the Bulldogs by a score.
You guys stink.
Geez, Coach, we're only down a couple of points.
No, I mean you guys really smell. You need to hit the showers. And here, I got every one of you new bars of soap from the Sterling Soap Company. Each bar is artisan crafted using natural ingredients and essential oils. They also have shave soaps, colognes, beard balm, and a whole lot more. Now get in there.
But Coach, we have another half to play.
I don't care. I can't stand to be around you. A few minutes later. All right, bring it in tight. You guys are still playing terrible, but you're smelling great out there. Now listen, you're going to need to stock up for the rest of the season. We got a lot of tough games left. So go to sterlingsoap.com after the game. That's STIRLING soap.com. You got that?
Yes, Coach.
Great. sterlingsoap.com on 3. 1, 2, 3.
sterlingsoap.com.
Let's start with what happened on this day in 1994, when NASCAR driver Neil Bonnett died during a practice run at Daytona International Speedway. Now, Bonnett was one of the members of the Alabama gang that consisted of drivers Red Farmer, Bobby Allison, Donnie Allison, and Davey Allison. For Neil, Bobby was like a second dad, and Davey, a brother. He grew up with racing in his blood and a desire to be behind the wheel of a race car. He won 18 times on the Winston Cup circuit. On April 1st, 1990, though, Bonnett was involved in a multi-car wreck at Darlington that sent him to the hospital. A severe head injury caused him to suffer from amnesia. He did not recognize his wife, his children, or his best friend Dale Earnhardt. It took a few weeks and a remembrance of a hunting trip he'd taken with Dale to unlock his memory and get back on the road to recovery. He retired from race car driving after that wreck, and he began hosting a NASCAR-themed television show, but that desire to get back behind the wheel of a race car kept creeping back in. He was finally cleared to drive and come back in 1993 with his first race set for Alabama's Talladega Superspeedway. In that race, he spun and went airborne into the front stretch catch fence before barrel rolling his car down to the infield. He was able to walk away from that horrific crash uninjured, and in fact made it up to the broadcast booth to call the rest of the race on television. He sat out most of the rest of that season, but the lure to once again climb back in a race car was just too strong, and he returned to fire up the engine for the last race of the year at Atlanta in order to help Earnhardt win the points championship. Now, here at the start of the 94 season, Bonnett was back at the racetrack preparing for the season-opening Daytona 500. He had a 6-race deal for the year, and he was excited to be in the number 51 Country Time Chevrolet. It was the first practice session at Daytona, and Bonnett was running it wide open when the car broke loose in turn 4. The car banked hard left, and then a correction back to the right sent his car into the wall nearly head-on. The initial cause of the wreck was attributed to oil on the track between turns 3 and 4, but that was ruled out. Another factor considered were the tires on his car. He was running Hoosier tires instead of Goodyear's. After a near-fatal wreck the day before, followed by another fatal crash 3 days after Neil's, with all of those cars running Hoosiers, it was speculated something was wrong with the tires. Hoosiers pulled all of their tires from the race that week. But the cause of the wreck was later determined to be a broken shock mount. Tuning the shocks to a dangerous point allowed the car to ride lower to decrease drag. Neil Bonnett was 47 years old. On this day in 2024, another fast man died in a car accident. Kelvin Kiptum had a special gift of being able to run really long distances incredibly fast. In October of 2023, in only his third marathon, Kiptum set the official world record for the marathon, running the Chicago Marathon in 2 hours 35 seconds. And yes, Eliud Kipchoge ran a faster 26.2, but his sub-2-hour effort was not in an official marathon. Kiptum's effort actually bested Kipchoge's official marathon record of 2 hours 1 minute 9 seconds. On this night, Kiptum was driving in western Kenya around 11 p.m. with his coach in the passenger seat and a young woman also a passenger in the car. The car went off the road and into a ditch. It flipped, and Kiptum, who was not wearing a seatbelt, was ejected from the car. His coach, Gervais Hakizimana, was also killed. The young lady was severely injured and transported to the hospital. Kiptum was only 24 years old. On this day in 2002, there was controversy in the figure skating world, and this time it had nothing to do with Tonya Harding or Nancy Kerrigan. This was the 2002 Winter Olympic Games in Salt Lake City, and the event was the pairs figure skating competition. Entering the night's final free skate portion, the Russian pair of Elena Bereshnaya and Anton Sikralitsa were in first place after their short program. The Canadian couple of Jamie Salé and David Peltier were a close second. Issues actually started in the warm-up for this event, with a number of skaters on the ice prior to the start of the program. Bereshnaya and Sikralitsa were practicing skating at full speed and setting up to practice one of their tricky elements, when Salé, also on the ice warming up, skating backwards, setting up for a triple toe loop, crashed into Sikralitsa. Jamie fell to the ice, while Anton was able to stay upright. They were both shaken, but uninjured. It was a strange start to the night. Minutes later, Bereshnaya and Sikralitsa took the ice for what was described as a very difficult program. The Russians had skated this program before, but they had never skated it cleanly in competition. And sure enough, there was a minor deduction when Sikralitsa stepped out of a double axel. It was enough of a deduction that both the American and Canadian broadcast teams said that if Peltier and Salé skated a clean program, they would win gold. And they did. They skated their program cleanly. And when they sat to watch the numbers, they were rated higher than the Russians on technical merit, but for presentation, they fell short of the Bereshnaya and Sikralitsa 7 scores of 5.9 with their 4. They needed a fifth 5.9 on presentation to overcome their short program deficit. As soon as the numbers flashed up, showing the Canadian pair had finished second, questions were raised.
How did that happen? They won that program. There's not a doubt in anyone in the place except for maybe a few judges.
I look at my coach and I go, it's going to switch, right? Because I really thought it's impossible.
Not impossible, but almost immediately, questions began to be asked and the investigation narrowed quickly on the French judge, Marie Rennes-Lagugne. She was soon confronted by the chair of the International Skating Union's technical committee, demanding an explanation. It didn't take long for Lagugne to admit she'd been pressured by the head of the French National Skating Federation to vote for the Russians.
The French judge broke down into tears and started crying and saying, "You don't understand what pressure I'm under."
Allegedly, it had been a quid pro quo arrangement with the Russian Federation to help the French ice dancing pair in their competition a few days later. Lagugne later denied her admission.
As soon as I had put down my pen, I started to suffer from a series of attacks, physical, verbal, and the worst, moral. I was trapped, and people behaved toward me in a manner worthy of a police dictatorship. This led me to say what these people wanted me to say. So, because of my emotional state, I couldn't take it anymore. I broke down.
But the pressure continued to mount from Canadian and American media. 4 days later, an agreement was finally reached. The Russian pair kept their gold medals since they were not involved in any of the pressure tactics themselves, while the Canadian pair of Peltier and Salé were upgraded from the silver to the gold medal. Laguna, along with the head of the French National Skating Federation, were suspended for 3 years for their roles in the scandal. The controversy did eventually lead to a revamped scoring system 2 years later that took the subjectivity out of the process and created a more mathematical score based on execution of the key elements. On this day in 1990, it was one of the biggest upsets in boxing history, if not all of sports history, when Buster Douglas knocked out Mike Tyson. This fight was held in Tokyo. Tyson was an undefeated 37-0 and the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Not only had he not lost a fight, he had never been knocked down. He became the heavyweight champ 2 years prior after knocking out Michael Spinks in 91 seconds in the Once and For All fight. And the fight prior to this one, he knocked out Carl the Truth Williams in 93 seconds. People were not lasting long in the ring with Iron Mike, and everybody was expecting another first-round knockout for Tyson. The fight against Douglas was supposed to be a tune-up for an anticipated meetup with Evander Holyfield, who had just bumped up to heavyweight, and he had a ringside seat for this one. And by at least one account, Tyson was looking past Douglas to the Holyfield fight. Singer Bobby Brown included a story in his biography about partying with Tyson the night before, which rolled into the morning of the fight. At one point, Brown reminded Tyson about the fight he had later in the evening, and maybe he should get some sleep. Tyson apparently responded with, "This dude's an amateur. I could beat him if I didn't sleep for 5 weeks." Well, Vegas was not touching this fight. Only one casino put odds on it, with Douglas listed as a 42-1 underdog. But Buster was a worthy challenger. He was in the top 10 of heavyweight challengers at that point. He entered the fight with a respectable 29-4 record, with 19 of those wins coming by knockout. He had 6 inches in height on Tyson, and he had the reach advantage by 12 inches. Douglas showed some punch early, connecting with jabs enough to swell Tyson's eye by the 6th round. In the 8th, though, it looked like Tyson had ceased toying with the mouse and moved in for the kill, landing a right uppercut that stunned Douglas and sent him to the mat. Buster only managed to get to his feet after a 9 count, and then was saved by the bell to end the round to allow him to regroup and remember where he was. But there was some controversy. Referee Octavio Myron's count was slow.
And there's a right hand uppercut, and down goes Douglas. As suddenly as that.
Can he beat the count?
He got a little overconfident. Got a little loosey-goosey. Still wobbly. Let's see what Mike can do to finish. And the bell ends to save Buster Douglas at the end of round 8.
Now, it is a 10 count, not exactly a 10-second count, but it should be more like 10 seconds. Instead, Myron's count to 9 took 13 seconds, with Douglas just beating the count to 10. Coming out of their corners to start the 10th round, Douglas took advantage of what looked like a tired Tyson, landing a series of jabs and then stung him with an uppercut. That opened him up, and Douglas pounced with a 4-punch combination that sent Tyson to the mat.
Rolling willingly just to try to get in the shot that will finish things in.
Oh, the uppercut.
What an uppercut by Douglas, and down goes Tyson.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's over. It's over.
Mike Tyson has been knocked out.
Unbelievable.
Buster Douglas had shocked the world, not just the boxing world, but the entire world with his 10th round knockout of Tyson. However, Tyson's promoter Don King immediately protested the fight, pointing to the long count that Myron had given Douglas in the 8th. The WBA and the WBC both agreed that the count was extended, but the public outcry in support of Douglas's win grew louder. The protest was withdrawn, and Douglas' victory became official 4 days later. Douglas's career did not last much longer, however. His next fight as the undisputed heavyweight champ was against Evander Holyfield, who knocked Douglas out in the third. Douglas retired after that fight. A long-rumored rematch with Tyson never materialized, and they never met again in the ring. And in 1988, Dave Tiger Williams was released by the Hartford Whalers, effectively ending his career. And what, you don't know who Dave Williams is? Well, he was better known for being a fighter who played a little bit of hockey.
Oh, now Ben Wilson and Tiger Williams.
Ben Wilson and Tiger Williams.
Ben Wilson hasn't been able to get a punch in. Tiger Williams is, now he's starting to throw the punches. Tiger Williams is getting some very good punches in on Ben Wilson. Now it's Wilson's turn.
Williams holds the NHL record for the most penalty minutes of any player to ever skate in the NHL. Excluding the playoffs, Williams spent 3,971 minutes in the penalty box in his 14-year career. Dale Hunter is second on that list, and he had 400 less penalty minutes in 450 more games. For Tiger, fighting was an important part of the game.
The good thing about fighting is that you can restore respect, and that's something that you need in the game. I want to make sure that Sittler scores a goal and win the game, because that makes my job easier and makes my life easier.
He was not a prolific goal scorer, but he did have a couple of 30-goal seasons, with his best being a 35-goal season in '81 with Vancouver. Of course, he led the league in penalty minutes that season with 343. And time now for today's That's Got Nothing to Do with Sports fun fact. In 1948, 76 beavers were relocated via parachute to a remote part of Idaho. During the post-World War II boom, vacation houses started to be built in the town of McCall, Idaho, and all was going really well, except for those pesky beavers knocking trees down and clogging up the irrigation ditches there. So a plan was hatched to relocate the beavers to the remote and then roadless Chamberlain Basin. The beavers were paired up and placed in a box with air holes and a parachute. They were dropped into the wilderness, and upon contact with the ground, the boxes sprung open, and supposedly the beavers lived their happy, ecologically necessary lives in relative peace. That's all I've got for you today. Come on back tomorrow for another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.